निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां हयग्रीवमुपास्महे. So we've been learning a lot of things with respect to eternal wisdom. We understood what we actually mean by eternal. How old is old? Is it like 5 years or 10 years or 100 years, 1000 years? So we learned that eternal means anati. From time immemorial. We don't even know how long is long because it can go to the 4 Chaturyugas, it can go into the cycles of Chaturyugas. So from when did we learn these things? So that is a big question. So we learned that Vedas are Anadi, Apaurusheya. So we learned about the Vedic literature where we learned that Vedas were Akhanda. It was one big knowledge. In Dwapara Yuga, it was given to us as Rig, Yajus, Sama and Atharva by Vedavyasa Maharishi. In turn, we learned that it had 4 different parts in the Vedas: Samhita, Brahmanam, Aranyakam and Upanishads. So a quick recap of these, right? So inside the Samhita, Brahmanam, Aranyakam, Upanishad, we understood which is for the jnana, which is for our regular routine, which are for the rituals, so all these were there. And for us to understand the Vedic Upanishad knowledge, Upanishads also belong to the different Vedas. Each Upanishad was attached to different Vedas. So we learned about the very important 10 Upanishads, Isha, Kena, Kata, Prashna. So we learned that sloka also, and we learned about the major Upanishads. After learning these, we went into what we call as the Vedangas, the 6 limbs of the Vedas. If Veda took the form of a Purusha, of a human, we learned what are the different organs, which are his eyes, which are his hands, which are his feet. And we also saw how it extended to today's application. Like Chanda Shastra, we saw the current poetry which was there. In Shiksha, we learned how the oral tradition has helped us. And in each of these, Jyotisha, we saw it in the other session where we learned about how the Arundhati Vasishta Nakshatra were looked at as a twin star. So many things were as part of the Upanishads and the Vedangas. So the 6 Vedangas, the limbs are Siksha, Vyakaranam, Chandas, Kalpa, Nirukta, Jyotisha. We learned this. So in this, we covered reasonable parts where we gave an overview of the different aspects of it. From all this knowledge, we have advanced things which we are yet to discover also. So I'll be touching on a few things like that which we are not yet discovered, because most frequently the question which comes to me is, okay, we have learned all this, so many things are there. Why dig up all these old things? What is the use of it in current modern day? We are in AI technology now. What is the application of these in today's world, right? So I just want to give some glimpse of some futuristic things which are told in this. Okay. So our Vedic knowledge is not just restricted to Vedas, Upanishads or the Vedangas that we've seen. Vedanga, I said, is the angas, right? Like the hands or the feet. Our ancestors have given us the limbs of the Vedas. So if we speak about hands, we need the fingers in the hands, right? If we speak of the feet, we need the toes in the feet. So like that, they have classified the strengthening of our fundamental knowledge will come from what they call as the Upangas. Upanga means Upa-anga, which are auxiliary to the main angas. So Vedangas are there, Upangas are there. So what is there in Upanga? Mimamsa. Mimamsa Shastra we say, right? So Mimamsas, all the Vedas, the Karmakanda part, Purva Mimamsa we say. Upanishad part, Uttra Mimamsa we say. And everything was logical. They did a detailed analysis of why they derived to the conclusion they derived. That is why you will see different philosophies. You have Vishishta Advaita Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. How? Because they had a logic of deriving to the conclusion. So the Nyaya Vistara has a lot of Vedantic knowledge which go into the derivation, logic, explanation. Brahma Sutras, for example, everybody they have their reasons for even the number of sutras. So like that, the Nyaya Vistara. Many times we say, it's all too theoretical, can you give me examples? So our itihasas and puranas explain how all these should be done. So all what is mentioned in the Vedas are given as examples in itihasa puranas. Itihasa, itihasa means Bhagavan comes directly, takes avatara to give us example. He leads by example. So what if we are not like Rama? How do we understand it? Okay, you want a feminine role? Sita Mata comes along with him. No, I cannot be like Sita. Can you give me a simpler role, an easier role? How about others? So you have other examples. So you have Urmila, you have Kausalya Mata, you have so many other examples. I want to know how not to be. So you are given some examples of that also, you know. Why did Agalya undergo this shapa? Why did Kaikeyi make a mistake? So you have examples of what not to do. So Bhagavan, when he comes, his entire parivara comes with him, so that appropriate situations and times we know how to handle our life. So not only Ramayana, Mahabharata, huge storyline with so many examples of how we can understand it. My intellect is not like that to understand 100,000 slokas. Take the Puranas. Puranas also have interpretations of how we can lead life. So itihasas and Puranas, in fact we call it as Upabrahmana. It explains to us, the important aspects of Vedas itself. So that is covered here. Compiled to all this, they give us a list of rules to follow. People say Sanatana Dharma has no rules, we can be whatever way we want. We have a huge Dharma Shastra. We don't know the Dharma Shastra because we don't know it, we think it doesn't exist. So we have Dharma Shastras which we are supposed to follow. Okay. Even in law they say, right, ignorantia juris non explicit. Ignorance is law is not an excuse, but that is what we call as excuse for Dharma Shastras. So we claim an excuse. So these are called as the Upangas. Okay. So we have learned about Vedas, Vedangas, Upangas. Okay. So together, if you look at this chart, we have the Vedic literature. You have all the 4 Vedas, the Upanishads, you have the Vedangas. Inside the Vedas, you have these categories. So that's what is seen in this picture. So the Puranas, as I said, follow this category which is called as the Smriti, which is heard and retold. Heard and retold. Shruti, Smriti. So Shruti means Vedas which are just by hearing transferred. Smriti means it is remembered and transferred. Okay, so that is the basic difference, Shruti and Smriti. So, here if you notice, our itihasa, Ramayana, Mahabharata are considered as itihasa. So, if somebody calls it mythology, stop them then and there. Nothing what our ancestors told is a myth. We have different words for each of these. Itihasa, itihasam. Asam is past tense. This is exactly how it happened. So, it is a documentation. That is why you will see the lineage of so many kings, lineage of so many rishis. Sometimes it will be like, why are they mentioning all this? Because facts have to be stated. It is not to make it interesting. Even the good qualities of Duryodhana or Ravana will be mentioned. It is not to make us believe that they are cruel people. No. Call a spade a spade. They had these negatives, they had these positives. So everything is mentioned, that is why it is itihasa. Pura api navam puranam. Puranam means the things which are mentioned long back. Does it mean it is applicable only to long back times? No. It is applicable today, it will be applicable tomorrow. That is why it is Puranam. Whenever we see Pura api navam, everything will be like fresh as if it is new. So we get new perspectives. The other day I was speaking about time dilation. We think Einstein has discovered it. Our Puranas mention about it. Today we speak about IVF, right? Transplanting the fetus into somebody else. that is mentioned in Bhagavata Purana. How do we think Balarama was born? Devaki Mata conceived Balarama even before conceiving Bhagavan Krishna. And then that fetus was transferred to Rohini. So all this is mentioned in our Bhagavata Purana. So whatever advanced technology we speak of today is there. Just that sometimes we don't know that this is actually technology. We assume that it should be theory, which is not the case actually. So application of all this is mentioned in what we call as Upavedas. All these bundle of knowledge is there. So information from that is gathered and entire science is created. Entire vertical is created, I can say. For example, for the well-being, Ayurveda, it is not medicine alone. It is maintaining ourselves mentally and physically. It will extend our life. So the knowledge for living our life is mentioned in Ayurveda. Similarly, Dhanurveda is everything about warfare, weaponry. Dhanus does not here mean the bow. It means any weapons. Everything is mentioned in here. In fact, I heard somewhere that Australia is there, right? The original name was Astra Alaya. People used to store all the weaponry there. Astra Alaya is Australia. Lupta Hamsa. What do you think that is? Lufthansa, the airline. So like this, so many things have our traditional words. If we go back to our traditional words, it will be like, wow, how did we even not think about it? No? So those kind of interesting things are there. In this context, I remember, batteries, we say we are using today, right? There is a Samhita called Agastya Samhita, Agatyam we say. That mentions about creation of dry batteries. So all these are applications from the Vedas, itihasas, all the different angas that we've learned so far. Gandharva Veda is all about music, dance, art. So everything comes under that purview. So we say Samaveda is the birth of music itself, right? So our Gandharva Veda has everything related to the science of art. Okay. Arthashastra, politics. So economics, politics, everything is combined in Arthashastra. We would have learnt about Chanakya Niti, Vituraniti, all these are offsprings from Arthashastra. So these are called as Upavedas. Upavedas means these are connected to Vedas. It derives its information from the Vedas. It's not actual Vedas. That's why we call it's the fifth Veda. Many times we hear people saying like, no, this is the fifth Veda. Many also add Stapatyam to this. Stapatya is the Stapati, right? The sculptures, mansions, huge civil projects, like all these are Stapatya. That is also considered as one of this. Different schools of thoughts are there on that. So, on the whole, application of knowledge is the Upavedas. So, if we look at the whole structure, what we've discussed, if you remember this structure, we know the outline view of what our knowledge system is containing. So, here if you look at it, the Vedas, 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajus, Sama, Atharva, 6 Vedangas, Siksha, Vyakarana, Chandas, Kalpa, Nirukta, Jyotisha, 4 Upangas, Mimamsa, Nyaya, Purana and Dharma Shastra. Purana includes itihasa. The 4 Upavedas, the application is Ayurveda, Dhanurveda, Gandharva Veda and Arthashastra. So of this, the first 3 are usually called as the Chaturdasha Vidyasthanas or the 14 Vidyasthanas, the main source of knowledge. The last 4, the Upavedas, is considered as Dharmasthana because it is application, right? So it's called as Dharmasthana. Some cases people call this whole 18 as 18 Vidyasthanas. So it just depends on how they want to understand. So if we know this structure, we are already ahead of what is required. So we know, okay, somewhere here we can connect everything. Okay, so that clarity we will have. Is this clear? Yes. Okay. So now, as I said, all these give birth to so many other things. It's like, this is the fulcrum from where so many options happen. So The 64 kalas are all derived from this. The 64 kalas, in fact, Bhagavata Purana mentions that Bhagavan Sri Krishna learned 64 kalas in 64 days. So all those kalas are derived from this. Now we will go on to some of the advanced applications that I was telling, right? We spoke about Ayurveda, derived from all the knowledge sources that we discussed. So the eternal wisdom, one of the applications, let's see. Sushruta is a Maharishi. He lived very, very long back according to our traditional systems. It was in BC, that time, BCE. So Sushruta compiled a Samhita, which is called as a Sushruta Simhhita. And he is considered like the pioneer in surgeries. So what did Sushruta Maharishi do? He derived a lot of natural medicines. He also did big time surgeries. And surgeries became so common and so accessible even to very normal people. Okay. So in Sushruta Simhhita, there are, in fact I'll touch on this rhinoplasty in a minute. In Sushruta Simhhita, there are mentions about 121 surgical equipments. So different kinds of surgical equipments are mentioned. So if you just look at this, all these are the different varieties, and he's mentioned for which particular surgery, what kind of equipment should be used, how sharp should it be, what can be used for, today we say, right, they can make a place numb by applying this particular thing. For toothache we give anesthesia, whole anesthesia, specific anesthesia. He's used wine as anesthesia. He's tested on different categories of vegetables, bamboos and so many other things to have a different consistency, because different parts of the body have different consistency, right? Another very interesting thing that I read is when people go for a war, many times their parts will be damaged, like the lungs will be cut, and in war they just cut. So what happens is he used to do a suture, but in those days removing the suture was a very painful task, because once the suture is done inside, how will they remove it? So many used to die when suturing was removed. So Sushruta came out with a very interesting concept. The black ants are there, right? Remember? The black ants. He actually used the black ants as a stapler. So he used to, suture them with black ants. So once the black ant actually, clips it, the black ant naturally dies. And because it is a living being, it was biodegradable. The sutures need not be removed itself. So he helped so many people survive by applying this kind of suturing technique. And today when people go on a trip to forest and all, they still apply these concepts in army. Very, very interesting technology. So let me go into one of the very interesting things which is still applied based on Sushruta Simhhita. We all know about leech therapy and all which is used. I am not going into that. One very advanced technology that is mentioned in Sushruta Simhhita is plastic surgery, rhinoplasty. During those days when we were invaded, in fact British documented saying that we were surprised seeing even the street vendors could do advanced plastic surgery which even professional doctors in Europe could not do. So what was so interesting is it's all based on Sushruta Simhhita. So let me now go to what the British used to do for plastic surgery. Suppose a part of the nose gets destroyed, somebody has a damage in the nose because of some accident. So what the British used to do is they used to take the hand of the person, place it near the nose, take the skin from here, attach it to the nose and bandage the hand and the nose together. 48 days they had to remain like that, after which the hand will be separated from the nose. If it does not fall away from the hand by that time, then it means the skin in the nose is sealed. Then they used to suture it, the skin here will heal automatically. But the problem was the color of our skin here and the color in our nose is very different. So the rest of his life this person was embarrassed because his nose looked separate from his face. This is the advanced technology that was used in Europe. Let's go back to whatever Sushruta says thousands and thousands of years back. He says, if a person has his skin peeled off from his nose, you should use the skin from his face itself in order to do the surgery. So he says, use the skin near the cheek and use the skin on his forehead. So he mentions this particular leaf should be taken. Use that leaf to draw the template of the nose. Invert the leaf. Draw the template. Okay. He says, use wine as a anesthesia so that the person will not know the pain. Invert the skin from the forehead, supported by the skin near the cheek. He says, because the skin is from the face, the color will blend. He will not feel embarrassed after the surgery is over. No need to hold the hand for 48 days or anything because it is in the skin. And very interesting phrase he uses, the skin in the forehead will regrow. Who would have thought about it? The skin in the forehead will regrow, so he will not be embarrassed after the surgery. This is an example of Sushruta Simhhita. Okay, so this picture is actually from the Samhita itself. So this is how the surgery was actually made. Okay, so the rhinoplasty, in fact later a lot of people took these inspirations and started customizing the rhinoplasty as of today. So it is based on Sushruta Simhhita. Today so many things that belong to us are taken and people claim it to be their own, right? For example, during Sandhya Vandana, so many do pranayama. Anybody who does Sandhya Vandana will know the effects of pranayama. Today it is called as a cardiac coherent breathing. And it is helpful for people, is what I say. It stabilizes the heartbeat. Every morning people used to do this. That's our routine. We go to the Ganapati Sannidhi in different places. The first thing what they will do, they will hold their ears, sit and get up. Now if you Google it, it is called a super brain yoga, which improves the EEG and coherence. I was doing a similar workshop maybe a decade back in Coimbatore. The head of the department of the college said, even we had this training done. People from outside the country came here and they taught us how to do a Topu Karanam. Just that they called it Super Brain Yoga and they had copyrighted some aspects of certain things possibly, I don't know. So that improves our memory, it seems. Whenever our maths problem was wrong, our teacher used to ask us to do Topu Karanam, right? We didn't know the benefits of it. In Sanskritam it was called as Dobhir Karana. So using both the hands, Karana, we performed an action that is called Dobhir Karana. So this knowledge and connecting it to the original name would help us a lot in identifying these things. Okay. So going to some additional advanced technologies. There are many stories that we learn in our Puranas. I said Pura api navam, right? Purana. So one or two stories that we can understand is the very familiar story, Prahlada. When Prahlada was conceived by Kayatu, his mother, Indradeva kidnapped her because he was worried one more Asura child, what's going to happen to her? Like Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha created torments there. So how can we allow Kayatu to have one more Asura child? So it's safe to kidnap her. But then Narada Maharishi stopped her. Narada Maharishi does a lot of things to benefit us, but because our knowledge of Narada Maharishi mainly comes from movies and serials, we think Narada Kalakapriya. Not at all. He is a Sadguru, Sadhacharya. He is the reason for so many of our itihasas and puranas, the question and answers that are here today. Narada Bhakti Sutra speaks about so much of devotion. Narada was the reason why Valmiki Maharishi got clarified and gave us the entire Ramayana itself. Right? So Narada Maharishi's interactions are completely beneficial to us. Now what happens? Narada Maharishi protects Kayatu. And when she was living in his ashrama, she had pregnant Prahlada inside her womb. So he used to teach all good things, created bhakti, created so much of devotion that by birth itself Prahlada was filled with knowledge and he was filled with Hari Bhakti. He always thought about Bhagavan Sri Hari. Krishna Graha Grihita Atma says Bhagavata Purana. Krishna Graha Grihita Atma, which means his heart. Usually when they have some problem, they say, this graha is troubling you, this graha has caught you, right? Shani graha is there, that's why you are having this problem. A lot of things people say. What was the graha which was handling Prahlada? Krishna graha grihita atma. Prahlada's heart was grabbed by the graha which is Bhagavan Sri Krishna. So it was held by him. So what happened? Prahlada was so devoted. Now, why did he get the devotion? Because the knowledge was transferred when he was pregnant. Let's go back a few decades. People say, all these are crap. How can a child hear, when it is pregnant? Don't believe in all these. But what did our ancestors say? Wear a lot of bangles, go to the temple, worship Bhagavan, keep reciting good things, because all this will create an impact for the child. Okay. Now we see that in the birth of Prahlada. After Prahlada was born, Prahlada was a devout child. Is this a one-off incident? We know about Abhimanyu, Chakravyuha. When Abhimanyu was in his mother's belly, Arjuna explained a lot about how to enter a Chakravyuha. Chakravyuha means it's a war formation. In fact, that Vyuha, war formations, is an entire topic by itself. The kind of formations, how people had to penetrate into it. I did a project on that where it's about different formations, how they dynamically change the formations, the kind of mathematical equations and algorithms that's required to form the formation. For example, I'll just touch on this, just an interesting aspect. Chakravyuha, right? It has several concentric circles and each of the circles opens at a different place and each of it is dynamically rotating. So a person who should penetrate the Chakravyuha should know the mathematics of a moving object in multiple concentric circles in order to penetrate it. It is such a big challenge because the dynamic of soldiers will keep changing. Suppose he is able to destroy a few soldiers, it will be that number less. So the quick thing in calculation, because the speed is important to penetrate, so a lot of such interesting things happen. In fact, Arjuna and Krishna used to discuss about this after every day of war itself. So what happened is, the post-mortem that they did, they used to discuss this war strategy. Here the mathematical equation was slightly different. Those kind of discussions used to happen. So now, how did Abhimanyu know? Because when his mother had conceived, this knowledge was transferred. Is there any truth? Is there any science in this? Fingers crossed, right? And we have one more very interesting thing, which is Parikshit. When Parikshit was conceived, in fact there are Ashtavakra, there are many examples. So he will restrict it. When Parikshit was conceived, it is mentioned that Bhagavan itself protected Parikshit. He was initially born like a coal, karikatta, and then because of Bhagavan's help, Parikshit actually got his form and he was born as a normal child because the Brahmastra of Dronacharya's son, Ashwatthama, had heard the baby. Now, again a pause here, let's go back to the URL. What is Brahmastra? We have a concept called Shastra, we have a concept called Astra. Shastras are normal weapons. Astras are like missiles. Now think about this concept, the Brahmastra going and targeting the child inside the womb. I don't think any such concept has been invented till date. The specific object targeting, they can target a territory till now. That specific object targeting, we've not heard about it. But then that was done. So to that extent, the advanced technology is there. So today, slowly, gradually, people are catching up with this concept and we start hearing these news items, okay? Be careful what you say around a pregnant woman. Just as the fetus grows inside, the mother's voice can be heard by the fetus. Think about it. All these are current science news. All these are from the science magazines that are taken. Fetus learns and memorizes words even when they are, in that stage. So all people are now coming there, which what I'm trying to say is like our ancestors, because our wisdom is eternal, we've been there from time immemorial, it's all polished, revised, and they know so many things. We start questioning them with our current knowledge, and end of it we lose it. Just imagine if a person who would have otherwise recited Bhagavan's name gives up that because all scientific things say it's not true. What a loss for the child, right? So, I'll go to the final topic for today. This is the Vimanas. The moment we speak about Vimana, we know about Pushpaka Vimana. Why? Because it is mentioned during the Ramayana time. But what is taught to today's children? Who invented aeroplanes? Wright brothers, right? So, which means Bhagavan Sri Rama was a younger brother of Wright brothers. Right? That can be the only logic, because Wright brothers invented the aircraft, Bhagavan Sri Rama used the aircraft. So what can be the conclusion? The conclusion is Bhagavan Sri Rama's avatara was after Wright brothers. You know, that's the kind of insanity that is prevailing today. So let us go back and go into the Moola sloka of what is mentioned in Ramayana. What does Hanuman say? Hanuman says, this Pushpaka Vimana is the best among the best Vimanas that I have seen. Best among the best Vimanas. So, what does that mean? That means he had exposure to many Vimanas. Some of those Vimanas were best Vimanas according to him. Pushpaka Vimana seems to be even more advanced than that, so it is best of the best. Correct? So, Vimanas were prevalent during the Treta Yuga. So we go back to the Vedas. Is there any mention about Vedas? Yes. Ashwini Kumaras have used the Vimanas. That is mentioned in Vedas itself. Ashwini Kumaras, who were like the doctors. So in a war, when a person had his leg, cut, Ashwini Kumaras flew. So they used the Vimanas. That is mentioned. So, Ramayana also has the concept of Vimanas that is mentioned. So, if you go a little deeper, we have Vimanas compiled into a book, a Grantha, which is called as Vaimanika Shastra. This is authored by Bharadwaja Maharishi. So, we have the Vaimanika Shastra. What does the Vaimanika Shastra say? It speaks about the use of Vimana, which can move from one place to another. Today we see, right, Bombay to Delhi, you have a flight, you have normal flights that happens. It speaks about Vimanas which can travel from country to country. So, Bharat to the US or Singapore to Bharat, you go fly to different places. And it also speaks about how to travel between planets. How to travel between planets. So, going to Mars is not something new. People had gone, trying to fly to different planets was mentioned in the Vaimanika Shastra of Bharadwaja Maharishi. So this particular Grantha contains 8 chapters. Many of our earlier ancestors are very comfortable with having 8 chapters. We saw that in Ashtadhyayi, we saw it in many other Granthas. 3000 slokas, 100 topics, 500 sutras, 32 different techniques of how to fly an aircraft. So, war planes had to be done differently, local planes had to be differently. So, they had so many different ways of flying the aircrafts. So, what specific details they went into? They spoke about what dress the pilot should wear. And they used biodegradable, of course. What dress the pilot should wear. What should be the diet of the pilot before flying into an aircraft. So, all these are not modern things. So, they define what is an aircraft, the pilot, the aerial routes, food, clothing, metals, everything. And very interesting concept. This is subject to a bit of interpretation, but let me explain what I read about it. The planes were described into 3 categories: mantrik, tantrik and kritak. Mantra, what do we mean by mantra? Manana trayate, right? So, you think of something, you recite something, then it is a mantra. So with the mantra, these flights could travel, which means the power of the energy or maybe voice activated devices. When you say something, the flights could take off. Today we have this Alexa and Google. 10-15 years back, if somebody said, if you ask the lights can be switched on, we will be like, that's not possible, right? Today we believe in it because we are seeing Alexa, we are seeing Google. Those days they said mantra. Just by saying, the flights could fly. Those were possibly existing. And then they say tantric. Tantric means something equivalent to today's automated devices. So you use remote control, tantra, the equipment. So you use a remote control and you can allow it to fly. Like how kids play with a toy car, right? So the toy aeroplane flies when you click on the button. So something like that, they could fly actual aviation devices. But then they say all these will deteriorate, and in Kali Yuga, they will not be able to use all these. They will restrict themselves to Kritak, which means manually made aeroplanes. They'll be fit only to fly that. That is what is mentioned. So in Kali Yuga, people will be restricted to Kritak Vimana. So that is mentioned as the different Vimanas that are described, different categories of Vimana. So of the Kritak Vimana, they have mentioned 25 different varieties. So I have just listed the 25, we are not going into detail, just for you to get a feel. 25 different Kritak Vimanas are mentioned. So the kind of Vimana that we will fly in Kali Yuga. And very interestingly, how did they get the energy to fly these things? They use solar power. So the flights had what we call as the Surya Ganta Mani placed on top. Today we speak about the solar energy panel, right? So they could fly aircrafts using the Surya Ganta Mani. So that is also mentioned here. 4 major types of Vimanas are mentioned, which is the Rukma Vimana, Sundara Vimana, Tripura Vimana, Sapuna Vimana. The diagrams of all this with specific details, multi-layers, everything is mentioned in the Vaimanika Shastra. Many also had mercury-powered vertex. The details of how to work on a mercury-powered vertex is mentioned in a grantha called Samarangata Sutra. So where Bhoja Maharaja in his personal library compiled a lot of things. He was a lot into using these kind of equipments, robots and all. So he is mentioned in the Samarangata Sutra. So these are how each of these Vimana look. And the Tripura Vimana which we see here, right? Those Vimanas are not just the aerial ones. They could go on the air, they could go in the land, they could also go deep into the water. So it is like a 3-in-1 aircraft. So it could be used as a submarine, it could be used like our cars, it could also be used as a flying machine. So with all these inputs and the Samarangata Sutradhara, everything, there was a great Sanskrit scholar by name Shivkar Baba Thalpade, who was into aeronautics also. He developed a flying machine, okay, using all these inputs from Rig Veda, from the Vaimanika Shastra, Samarangata Sutra, everything. He developed a flying machine. So all the dignitaries, the Sayaji Rao Gaikwad, Lalit Narayan, Justice, everybody, including the British, were invited to see the first flying aircraft, and this happened in 1895. So the mission actually took off. It flew in the air for 1,500 miles before it actually crashed. It was an unmanned aircraft which was attempted in the front of all the dignitaries. And it flew, it made headlines in many papers. He called it as the Marut Sakha. The flight was called as Marut Sakha. Marut means air, right? So Marut Sakha, friend of the air. Now after this, the British was not very happy. How can a Desi create a flight? It is impossible. So all the granthas, references which he used was smashed from him. He was not permitted to be granted all the privileges in order to do his allowances were cut off. His wife, who was supporting, also moved out of the picture because they had put in their life, soul, everything to it, and everything is now stopped. So the flight, the extension of this could not carry on. And full 8 years after that, Wright brothers actually flew the flight. And today we are not taught about Shivkar Baba Thalpade, but we are taught about the Wright brothers. So Shivkar Baba Talpade, the plane attained 1,500 feet. It was witnessed by Sayuji Rao Gaikwad, the Maharaja of Baroda, and the Justice Govind Rade. So then everything had to stop. But now, slowly, gradually, everything is coming up. We have many news items of famous dignitaries speaking about how the flight had been mentioned in Bharadwaja Vaimanika Shastra. And there was a big conference which was held in the Mumbai University, the Indian Science Congress. There, Capital Bodas spoke about a few very interesting things about Vimana, which I think is important to share here. He mentioned the size of the Vimanas. This is from a news item from Business Standard that I took. He says, there were Vimanas which were 60 by 60, but there were also Vimanas which were 200 feet. So jumbo planes were existing as per the Vaimanika Shastra. It had flexible exhaust system, it says. So it was considered like the elephant's tusk, So those kind of, it can be flexible, it can be reduced. Those kind of exhaust was used, and he says we do not have those exhaust. He says they use different kind of alloys, but how to create those alloys we still don't have knowledge of it. And he has mentioned that we have something called as the radar, which could detect the shape of the aircraft which is coming. We don't have that technology today. So he's compared the existing one with our Vaimanika Shastra and says how we are way behind what is mentioned in Vaimanika Shastra. And this comes from a captain. Of course, there was a lot of uproar and roar. People said, no, how can you say this? This is not science. All those keep happening all the time. But our traditional books say differently. So I spoke about Ramayana. What about Mahabharata? Very interesting things. So 41 references are there in Mahabharata on flight missions. And there was an air attack of Salva on Krishna's capital Dwaraka. So that is where a lot of things about our Vimana is mentioned. And we'll be surprised to see how it relates so closely with the Vaimanika Shastra details that I mentioned now. So King Salva acquired a Vimana from a Danava called Maya. So it is from the Talatala Loka as mentioned. And what are the specialities of this Vimana? That will be very interesting. It says it's so extraordinary, it could appear in the sky, then it will disappear. Okay? Sometimes the Vimana was visible, sometimes it was not visible. Sometimes we see it on the ground, sometimes we see it on the peak, sometimes we see it in the water. I just spoke about Tripura Vimana, right? The wonderful Vimana flew in the sky like a firebrand. It was not steady even for a moment. So they had all these kind of very advanced technology of aircraft. And now Grantha was taken where it was developed by Professor Dongre, which says, in the Banaras University, which says the plane which is coated by a unique paint, they have mentioned the details of a paint. If a plane is coated with this paint, it will not be accessible even to a radar. So you can't see it. So those kind of paints, how to prepare it, how to use it is mentioned. So that was the reason for such a beautiful Vimana. Based on all these, not just Bharatiyas, a person in California attempted to recreate this entire Vaimanika Shastra, whatever was the input that was available for our earlier people. He took all those inputs from Rig Veda, from Vaimanika Shastra, and the Travis Taylor tried to recreate the Vimana, and he says all these works. So this research was very positive, which was published also. Now, what we do? An excavation happened, and the Chinese discovered some documents in Lhasa, Tibet. They did not know the language, so it was sent to us to understand what was happening and what was mentioned in this. And Dr. Ruth Raina of the university said that these documents contain information of how to construct interstellar spaceships. Now the Chinese have said that we are going to use some of these inputs in order to create some aspects of our space programs. So much of advanced technology is there. So many of these flights were anti-gravitational. So because the flights have to race against gravity, so they use specific metals, specific details and specific kind of energy to make it anti-gravitational. Today when people do yoga, they have this levitating, right? Anima lagima we say. So this concept of lagima. So they say that this lagima was used in order to create these aircrafts. And in that case, did they know about gravitation earlier? We were told that Isaac Newton was the one, when apple fell, he invented the gravitation, right? So our granthas speak about gravitation, the laws of gravity. It was mentioned in Surya Siddhantam. So we used to call it as Dharanatmika Shakti. Earth is standing firm in the space without falling away. This is mentioned in Surya Siddhanta. And then we have many Varahamihira. Varahamihira has given such great information that we have to really learn whatever he is mentioned. He is spoken about water being there in Mars. He's spoken about so many advanced things. He's spoken about how to identify water in the Bhumi. Many things. How to identify that eclipse is going to come based on the clouds. All these great things Varahamihira has mentioned. So he's also mentioned about gravity. And very interestingly, Adi Shankaracharya in Prashnopanishad, he says, we breathe in and breathe out, right? He says this itself is because of gravity. If you go in the higher planes, this concept of breathing is not there. Prana, apana we say, right? He says this is not there, this is working only because of gravity. So that is one of his question answers in the Prashnopanishad. So like this, many have actually given us inputs. In fact, verbatim what translation is by Newton is also mentioned in our Siddhartha Shivamani. So Earth naturally attracts every object in space towards itself. So all these, in fact, every law of Newton, first law, second law, third law is there, right? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That was mentioned by Kanana Maharishi. Everything verbatim is all available in our scriptures. And whatever is yet to be discovered, that is also there in our scriptures. I just gave a glimpse of it. And think of the vastness that is there. And we've just taken some Ramayana, Mahabharata, a few things here and there. But ours cannot be curtailed by a library also. Such huge resources we have. So with all these resources, we just have to tap it open. And we can very easily be the pioneers, the leaders of our Bharatiya knowledge system. Again, Bhasu Rataha. We enjoy being immersed in knowledge. That is our natural DNA. So to understand our roots, to dwell on it, to share it, to make our people understand the greatness of Bharatam, greatness of our rishis. With all these knowledge, they said, okay, let me go into Bhagavan's Tiruvadi. It's not these knowledge, all these are materialistic. After knowing this, because their conviction became really solid after knowing all this tested, proven things, all this is true, which is mentioned, Bhagavan who are not able to visually see or practically, see here, he is definitely true because the Upanishad says so, our Rishis say so. And then they went into Bhagavan's Tiruvadi. Now, we are not sure of this. The few experiments we attempt here was all Western based. So we start believing in that knowledge rather than going into Bharatiya wisdom. So with this thought, we will wrap up for today. One last thought on this. Even for this Chandrayaan, this concept was used. That's what is mentioned by here Madhavan Nair says that 1500 years before Isaac Newton, the Indian scriptures speak about Bharatiya knowledge. 1500 years I think is a number. But Surya Siddhanta is all way back according to our ancestors. And he says, even for Chandrayaan, the equation of Aryabhatta was used. When was Aryabhatta's times? When was Chandrayaan? Even for that, these equations were used. So basically coming to conclude that whatever is there anywhere is available in our scriptures. All we have to do is look into it. Yad iha asti tadanyatra yenne hasti na tatpachite. We learned, right? Dharme cha arthe cha kame cha mokshe cha baradarshava. Yad iha asti tadanyatra yenne hasti na tatpachite. Be it dharma, be it artha, be it kama, be it moksha. These are the four major buckets within which we can bring everything. Whatever is there in Mahabharata, this sloka is from Mahabharata, mentioning only about Mahabharata. It's mentioned that everything is there in Mahabharata. What is here may be outside, may not be outside. But whatever is outside is definitely covered here, says Mahabharata. If Mahabharata has that, think of the 18 different main categories that we mentioned, the 14 Vidyasthanas, the 4 Dharmasthanas, the 64 Kalas, how much of resource we have. And we enjoy knowledge. That is a basic thing that we have. This concept of Mandaka, it's too much to learn. It is not a trait, it is not the DNA of Bharatiya. How much ever is given to us, we want more, we want more, we want to learn more. That is our natural instinct. We want to keep learning and not get attached to it. Okay, so we will learn it, but we will not get attached to it. We will share. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. But today the problem is everybody else copyrights it. They want to copyright turmeric, they want to copyright even Gomutram, tuberculosis curing Gomutram, the benefits of neem, everything people want to copyright it. But Bharatiyas knew all this. Dobi Karanam, we knew about it. Using the straw, we knew about it. Using the wheel, we knew about it. The Vimanas, we know about it. So all we have to do is, especially the younger generation, if they can look into it and go into the advanced technology, experiment it with the appropriate things, prove it to the world, we will be way ahead in the future. So with this thought, let's do a Kayena Vacha and wrap up for today. Kayena Vacha Manasendriyaiva Buddhyatmana va Pranide Swabhavat Karomi Yatyat Sakalam Parasmai Narayanaayeti Samarpayami Achyutaya Namaha Anantaya Namaha Govindaya Namaha Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu.
Thanks a lot.